Hello, and welcome to our episode number 49 of Life.ev, a podcast that dives into exploring values. I'm your host, Ajit Panicker, and I lead an air conditioning company, Nova, and Pure Blue, a tech startup in the air conditioning domain. Every Saturday, 11 a.m., for the last 49 weeks, we brought you conversations that go beyond business growth, focusing on the values that fuel it. So let's embark on a journey to uncover our true purpose and how we can grow by enriching our lives. Welcome to Life.ev, where we explore values in life and business. And I've got Vivek Asrani with me. Hi, Vivek, how are you doing?
Hey Ajit, how are you doing?
Absolutely good. This is the 49th episode, and Vivek Asrani, by now, Vivek doesn't need an introduction, but he is the driving force behind Chemo Fastener Company, a trailblazing company in the industrial fastener sector. What sets Vivek apart is his deep engagement with exploration of values. Now, for close to 4 years, he has dedicatedly penned his reflections on this topic every week. His insightful thoughts are accessible on his website, vivekasrani.com. Additionally, Vivek has authored the book One Day at a Time, Reflections from Times of Silence, which further delves into his journey and insights. This thought provoking read is available on his website and also on Amazon, offering readers a chance to engage with his profound understanding of values and their role in both personal and professional lives. In today's episode of Life.ev, we're discussing on a reflection which is soaring like an eagle. Over to you, Vivek. Let's hear your reflection on this one.
So Ajit, this is actually not only one of my favorite reflections, but this is a reflection I keep in mind almost sometimes every day or every week, especially in the work context. And as the podcast will progress, hopefully I'll be able to explain that statement a little better. So the eagle, for all of us has always been a symbol of strength. It's a strong bird. We always think of an eagle and the eagle flying at a great height, reaching great heights. And one would assume that there would be very few creatures in this world who would want to, as we say in India, take panga with the eagle, right? But I read an interesting story that, an article, not a story, but an article, how the raven is the only bird that dares to peck at the eagle's neck. So a raven, in comparison to an eagle, is not as strong. Now, intuitively, one would say, all right, if somebody is, fighting with an eagle, the eagle is going to fight back. But the eagle actually does something very interesting. The moment the raven starts pecking at its neck, it starts flying higher and higher and higher. It just starts soaring to a different height, which the eagle itself can, but the raven suddenly finds itself out of oxygen at that height and falls off due to the lack of oxygen. And this attitude of the eagle I found to be remarkable. So in life, we have a lot of forces and sometimes people who come as a negative influence, come as a negative energy, as a negative force. And the first thing that intuitively sometimes comes to mind is to fight back, to hit back. But I keep reminding myself of this reflection to say, how can I go higher so that this negative element, this influence automatically falls off? So even though it's metaphorical in my head, it has had some tremendous practical applications. Okay, let me share with you. And I'm going to share this from a business context, Ajit. So in our industry, there are a lot of people who continue till this date importing material under wrong classifications, evading duties, and also selling material without invoices and cash, and all that rubbish continues happening sometimes, and we keep hearing about it, and we obviously get affected. So I said, now I have two choices. I mean, either I do what they do, which obviously was not even an option for us, okay, or I hit back and fight back and complain and do all of that. I said, we don't want to spend energy around that because we're just too small, and I'd rather focus on our own business. So the approach we then took is, how can we keep raising the bar in terms of quality and service standards in front of our customer, so that these little ravens who are pecking at our neck will automatically fall off and say, look, we can't give you all this. And the customer says, well, but we want all this now because now the bar has been raised so high. And in the process, we've been able to create, in our own small way, an organization that is today respected and recognized. And we love what we do because we are constantly moving to a higher level so that we don't have to deal with some of the negative influences that are entering our industry. So, soaring like an eagle, uh, Ajit, has been for me personally, and I think for all of us, a great thing to keep in mind, that when we are challenged, when we are faced with certain situations, we don't have to always hit back. There is also an option to move to a higher level. The lower will automatically fall off.
Amazing. This also brings me to, when you keep flying alone at these great heights, and I think that's an entrepreneur story, right? When you look from a metaphor, when you actually take this whole thing and you see how entrepreneurs actually operate, when you're all alone out there, how do you cultivate the resilience and the self-reliance in that whole journey? And you're being pushed to the top, you are lonely out there. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, how has it been for you just being there? How do you actually manage that resilience and self-reliance?
I think that's a great question. And all of us who've been entrepreneurs know that at some level it gets lonely. You have lots of people around you, you have your team, you have your advisors, you have many stakeholders you're interacting with, and you're busy all day. So, arguably, at one level, you're meeting so many people all the time. Then, how can you argue that you're lonely? But the sense of loneliness is not in the physical loneliness. It's when you have to make critical decisions for the organization, when something comes your way, which is a challenge or a difficult period to navigate. You realize that as the captain of the team, the captain of the ship, you have to now bring out the best from within. And sometimes you don't have all the answers. Okay. And there is that little bit, that sense of loneliness. Second is, sometimes, you in your mind's eye can see something, like the eagle from that height can see something which not everybody from down can. So sometimes you can see something in your mind's eye which not everybody else can see or shares with you. And therefore, that sense of loneliness sets in till you're able to communicate, share, and others can see the same thing. But there are three things, Ajit, that have personally helped me, and I think would be useful for all entrepreneurs to keep in mind. One is, when we move from competition to excellence. So, in a competitive mindset, we are always other oriented. I'm looking, and it doesn't mean that we shouldn't be mindful of competition. No, of course, we need to be. But the driving force in my business cannot be the raven that is, you know, pecking at my neck. So when I move from competition to excellence, I'm aware of what the competition is doing. And then I take all that information and I take it, bring it back home, convert it into learnings, insight, innovation, creativity, dynamic uh, execution, and move the organization to the higher level. That in itself, that process of moving from competition to excellence builds innovation and resilience. Second is moving from legitimacy to authenticity. Very often in life, and this is even in our personal lives, we do things to gain legitimacy from society and from people around us. And it is important, all of us are human. But it's equally important, if not more, if you ask me, to be authentic. If I continue being to people around me the way they want me to be and making everybody happy, yes, I might be popular, I might have good relations with people, not ruffling feathers, but somewhere deep down, I might lose my authenticity. But the converse, that if I stick to my authenticity, people will recognize me for truly who I am, and the depth of my relationships will be much better. That builds a certain level of not only resilience, inner security, but also deep relationships, because people connect deeper with authenticity rather than with legitimacy. Third is moving from being profit centered to being principle centered. Profits are absolutely important. Don't get me wrong. Profit is like fuel in a car. If I don't have fuel, my car is going to stop. If I don't have profits in my business, the business will not sustain. But I don't drive my car for the petrol. I drive it for a purpose. Similarly, when I shift my focus to say, yes, I'm aware of the profitability in the system, which is very important, but my anchor is not just the money, it is the principles by which we are working, in terms of whether it be integrity, whether it be customer delight, whether it be a win win attitude, whether it be the excellence. That strengthens the root. And the quality of the fruit depends on the depth and the strength of the roots. So when we strengthen our own roots personally and in our organizations, it builds that resilience, that security, and in a way, in the midst of a storm, we shake, but hopefully we don't break and fall. You know? So moving from being profit centered to principle centered, moving from legitimacy to authenticity, and moving from competition to excellence has been my personal experience, Ajit, uh, in building what you said, that resilience, and in a way taking care of some of that loneliness that comes in.
This is something that I wanted to ask. Um, when you're soaring high and you need to be there. I mean, it's a factor of entrepreneurship, right? As an entrepreneur, you also have to mentor and empower others to soar in their own capacity. And then there's this whole saying that, under a very large tree, no seeds or no plants can actually grow. How do you actually handle this? How do you make sure that while you're soaring, you also empower and mentor others to soar in their own capacities? Have you faced some challenges around it, or how do you actually go about approaching it?
I've always maintained that business is all about people. And, we keep saying people are our most valuable asset. Yes, and that is absolutely true, but it doesn't mean that it's the easiest asset to handle. And I'm not saying that it's a problem, but I'm saying it needs to be handled with a lot of thought and care. A computer or a machine has an instruction manual that comes with it. I just need to be careful about not spilling something into my electronic device and not pressing the wrong buttons. It's as simple as that. But with people, there are emotions. They come with their own backgrounds. They come with their own aspirations, their own fears, their own paradigms, their own perspectives, their own expectations, right? Their own personalities. But let me read out one line, Ajit, from my reflection. We really soar high when we dive deep. And I've gone on to say that issues will automatically become smaller as we make ourselves bigger. Our ability to go higher in our organization is dependent on our willingness to go into the depth of what is really going to bring out the best in our people. So, the willingness and ability to get to know our people, to spend time with them, to communicate clearly, effectively, But communication is not just what I'm saying, but also listening very carefully to not only what is being said, but what is not being said. To then, like a parent would do with a child. Now, you have two sons, I have two sons. Both are boys, right? Both the brothers, in your case and in my case, have different personalities. But yet, they're two fruits from the same tree. And for each of them, we say, okay, what's best for this one and what would be best for that? It's no different with our teams. But if you're not willing to make the effort, if we try and paint everybody with the same brush, if we just send out memos and circulars and instructions and say, this is how it should be, and this is my company, and this is how I want you to behave and act. It's like as a father coming, I mean, when the kids come of age saying, okay, this is our family, and as a father, this is how I think, and as parents, this is how I think you guys should be. Okay, now go do it. And I don't want any problems, I don't want any mistakes, and go live a great life, and this is how it should be. Obviously, it doesn't work that way, right? So if it doesn't work at home, why do we believe it's going to work at the workplace? So the depth, and I repeat, we really soar high when we dive deep. So our willingness and ability to dive deep in every aspect of our business is really the answer. And take some of the greatest companies, whom we admire. I'm just taking one small example. Take Apple. I mean, the smallest detail. I remember a friend of mine saying, just the sound of the AirPods when he shuts the case, he's saying it's just so fabulously built. I mean, just that small detail. So going deep, and I think that the depth of whatever we do, Ajit, is at the root of the ambition. And I remember last week we spoke about being ambitious. Soaring like an eagle in a way is also being ambitious, but doing it in a manner where we are not fighting the negativities in our life with negativity. We're just moving beyond it and creating a new and a different height and an orbit for ourselves.
This also brings to another question, and this is what most entrepreneurs also tends to, they tend to misunderstand and sometimes make a mistake, and they pay a huge price for this. So when you're soaring high, everything's going in your way, you've got it right. You tend to misunderstand, as business owners that, look, I've reached a point where I need to be looking at the macro level. Now, how do you ensure that you're looking at the bigger picture while also managing day-to-day details? Now, it's very complex. Very few people get it right. Look at the macro level, make sure the delegation is right, but you also ensure that you're managing things day to day and you're aware of what's happening, and it's not that you're in for surprises. And that's a problem that most people, most entrepreneurs who are soaring high end up having. What is your take on this? How do you make sure that it doesn't come in your way?
My observation, experience, and I've been as much at fault as anybody else might be as an entrepreneur. We very quickly gravitate to doing things that we enjoy, especially when the business is successful, we are growing, we delegate. But what we forget is that there are certain things we cannot and should not delegate. And robust reviews should not be delegated. Now, a review is very different from an update. It could be once a month, it could be once a quarter. It could be, you decide the frequency. But to take this complete hands-off approach and say, look, now I've got my team, they're running it, and we sometimes say it very proudly, boss, I don't even know what's going on. They're just managing the whole show. I'm so happy here. Boss, and then you will really one day cry that I didn't know what was going on. So robust reviews, to my mind, is at the center of the question you asked. That has to be the cornerstone of being macro, being a visionary, driving a business to the next level without losing sight and grip of what's going on in the organization, right? That's one. Second is never lose touch with your customers, because end of the day, it's the customer who's running your organization, not you. And your customer is keeping your organization alive, not you. Third is never lose touch with the people and the culture in the organization. Very often, organizations have disintegrated because the culture has disintegrated. The products were still good. Okay, the processes were decent, but the people running it, the culture changed, and therefore the process broke down. So never lose touch with the people. Fourth is never lose touch with what is, and I said this earlier, what is not being said. As entrepreneurs, Ajit, our job is to see what others don't see and to hear what others are not saying. So when we just be a little mindful of these few elements, then whether you are an entrepreneur of a small business or you're the prime minister of the country doesn't matter. These are some of the things which we have to. We're all visionaries, but we can't lose sight of what's going on.
Awesome. So, on that note, that's the time that we had for episode number 49 today. Thank you for joining us, and we'd love to hear from you. Join the dialogue on our social media platforms. Share your questions, your learnings, insights. Share this episode with your friends and family and get a conversation going. That's what we have for today. Join us next week again for another enriching episode on Life.ev, where we continue our exploration into the fascinating world of exploring values in our lives. Vivek, thank you very much. Every week, we've been actually going through these 20-minute discussions. They're very enriching in itself. And we are coming toward the end of our season one, another 3 more weeks to go.
Yep. Unbelievable. Yeah. It's been almost a year, and next week is going to be a half century, 50. But all
Awesome.
thanks to
Thank you
you.
very much.
All thanks to you. Thanks a lot, Ajit. Take care.
Thank you very much. See you next week. See you next Saturday at 11 a.m. Bye bye.